Recently, one of my favorite YouTubers, William Osman, posted a video fixing up his excavator. And in this, he mentions his drive lever grip is worn out. He needs a new one.
These old rubber things, this one is completely gone. I have the CAD skill to make this hexagon shape that it goes on, but I don't know how to model, a nice comfortable grip up top.
Now, I also don't have the CAD modeling skills. I don't even have a 3D printer, but I felt like I could make something for him. The plan is to mount the thing with a standard socket and build a wood grip around it. I'll add a bolt to secure it together and a pin to keep it from rotating, and finally a leather wrap to hide all the hardware.
So I'm gonna give you guys the dimensions of this handle right now, and if you could
Okay, so it is 0.75 inches. That's all I need. 3/4 inch and 3/4 inch deep socket. And JB Weld steel. This project is gonna be an endeavor for me. I'm not even sure if I'm gonna end up with anything presentable at all. I'm working with a lot of tools and materials here that I don't use often, and that adds a large degree of uncertainty to the project. But even so, I just have to take things one step at a time and hope it all comes together nicely. Okay, so time to check the scrap wood pile in the corner of my apartment. 2x4 might be too thin, so 4x4. This piece is a nice size to work with. It does have a massive fault in it though, so maybe one of these. When I'm making things for myself, I'm usually only worried about functionality. I don't care how it looks. But in this case, when I'm making something for someone else, I want it to be presentable, to look nice and feel nice. I don't have the luxury of being able to fix it or modify it later on, because at the end of all this, it's getting shipped across the country. After finishing the rough shape for the handle and then realizing I didn't own a 1-inch drill bit, I called it a night. But then I discovered my first mistake. I've had a realization. Excavators don't have one throttle. They have two. So I made a really nice throttle or gear shifter, but it's not gonna work on the excavator. This requires a minor rethink of the plan. So with one day down, I'm back to square one, cutting down my boards, sketching my design, and finishing the rough shape. I only had a few days left at this point to finish the project and ship it off to Will, so I didn't really have a lot of time to be making mistakes. At the same time, I'm trying a lot of unfamiliar things here, so I'm not even sure if I'm going to finish the project at all. I hadn't really used this oscillating tool since getting it in a bundle, but it saved me a lot of time here. It did most of the shaping, and then I went in with the palm sander to round it out. I was actually really happy with how the grips were looking so far, but I was hoping to be further along at this point. It was day 2 and I hadn't even started the leatherworking. The next day when I got the right drill bit, I gave it a little too much gas and chipped the edges of that bevel. I had enough depth to work with, so I decided to just sand it down to clear those chips. So at this point, the project was taking longer than I originally anticipated. But I spent the past year working for a YouTuber who's not doing it full time anymore, so I'm out of a job right now. So what better do I have to do than spend the better part of a week making something for a different YouTuber? I cut the notch for the orientation pin of the socket, then cut a channel where the edges of the leather wrap will sit. I mocked up the shape of the leather with tape, then flattened it out to get my stamp. This way I get a smaller template that I can stretch into place, rather than a larger one that'll develop wrinkles. An alcohol-based stain will dry out the oils and harden the leather so it keeps its form after it's been stretched over the curves. The stain for the wood doesn't really have a function, it just looks pretty. Once the leather is stained, it gets soaked, stretched into place, screwed down, and then heat dried to retain the form. It honestly worked better than I expected, and now I had a grip that actually looks like a grip. This point in projects like these is really gratifying. I can see the finish line. I can tell that I'm going to end up with something that's somewhat usable. I set out to do something with a lot of uncertain factors that I didn't know if I would succeed or not. Taking all these tools and skills that I've toyed with in the past and combining them into something actually kind of presentable. As sappy as it sounds, content from Osman and other creators like him is a big reason I'm doing what I'm doing now. Not being afraid to try things and make mistakes.
If you want something and you can't afford it, spend less money, build it yourself. If you want a fire truck, damn it, build a fire truck. I don't care if you live at your parents' house.
I've been watching Will's content for 5 or 6 years now, since the laser cutting days, and back then I was in my parents' house with not much more tool experience than popsicle sticks and glue. But after years of reckless experimentation, now I'm somewhat competent at a lot of things. I'm really proud with how these grips turned out, given the short time frame and sheer variety of things I had to figure out. I have a new favorite material in JB Weld steel. I finally got to put my oscillating tool to use, and I reconnected with my leatherworking hobby after 2 or 3 years. To William Osman. I thought you might like a break from unboxing all the 3D printed cocks you probably got shipped. I'm not a woodworker or a leatherworker, but I figured I'd attempt to make some nice grips for you. Hopefully they should fit well. Thanks for all the inspiration, Evan. Thank you for your time.